Gotta get ready. Do y'all hear that music? What's going on? A wedding taking place? Are you the bride? Are you the guest? Will you be there? That's just my introduction. So I have a question. Do you ever take time to read the history that comes in scripture from the Old Testament? That is my question. All right, my music was saying there's a wedding taking place and Jesus wants you and me to be the bride. I am coming from Matthew, the 21st chapter, 4th chapter, if you didn't hear me. Matthew 24, starting at verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple. And the disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Now, Jesus was coming out of the temple, and the disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Okay. It seems like that there was some other constructions that had been made that enlarged, or Jesus didn't go into that part of it. So the disciples said, let's go check this out. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, this is when the Old Testament is very important to understand what was going on here. The Jews had a place that they worshiped God. They were people that were set aside by God. And this is the place, not only did they worship, this was where they were trained, this is where they were educated, this is where everything that the Jewish people needed, it was supplied here. Their storehouse was here. They didn't have to go to the world to get anything. When I say that, they didn't have to go to the city of Rome and ask the government for anything, because everything that they had since Solomon built this temple was not only used but perfected over time. So they just had a place that was just called their own. And then Jesus told them that this building that you're getting ready to show me, of the part that you think that I don't know anything about, let me just tell you all, not one stone, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the mountain of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. All right. When I went back into the Old Testament and I had read from Daniel, and Daniel gave me an insight that there was going to be some unthinkable things that was going to happen. But then I got curious and I wanted to know even more. So I began to study the history of the temple and what happened to it. Based on what I read, it was about 70 years after Jesus had died, and we know that he was resurrected. But after he died, 70 years later, the people of Rome saw the prosperity of the temple and decided, y'all need to pay some taxes. And when that issue became a problem, then the Jews basically said, hey, we haven't been bothering anybody. Y'all don't do nothing for us. We take care of our own people. And now you're telling us that we owe you some money? So now we're not dumb people over here. In fact, y'all need to be copying off us to learn how to straighten your own government up. But Rome was not hearing that. So just like inside the house of the Jewish establishment, they had people in there that was not always doing the right thing. So the Romans began to find ways to get into that prospering place. And we are persuaded that you're going to pay us some taxes. And the Jews were like, no, we ain't. And so they began to fight. Mind you, the Jews weren't nobody to play with now. They had doctors and lawyers and people that had learned the ways of God, and they knew the ways of God, and so they were established. God's ways are attractive, and they make you smart, and you will prosper. So the Jews at that time decided, no, we ain't having this, and so they had enough military forces to defend themselves. That's how much time they took to take care of what they had. They knew they had to come against the enemies. So a few times they got to fighting and the Jews won. But the story goes on that Rome overtook that temple, killed that many people, and everything that Jesus said in the 2nd chapter, there shall not be a stone left upon another that shall not be thrown down. So I started and I asked God, I said, Lord, what does that have to do with me? Because I understand that I can be deceived. I understand that many shall come using your name, sign of the Christ, and shall deceive many, because these folk not just going to come with just talk. These folk coming with some evidence that I can do something that's supernatural. It's going to cause a lot of people to say, I'm going after that. And Jesus said, don't go there. That's not me now. And nation shall rise against nation, earthquakes in divers places. And he said, all of these things are the beginning of sorrow. But then it goes on, and I went on down, and I went on down. And then I realized that there is information that's so important that we have to get, that I believe that the church who is being called by using God's name, that we are responsible to make sure that people are being taught correctly. I believe that God is going to raise up a generation that is going to demand that you teach me the word. And if you can't give it to me, and you are the leader or you're the pastor and this is your income, these people are going to walk away because they're going to get tired of you not being able to answer these questions. And it's going to come from a strong generation of people. It's going to come from a strong generation of young men. They are going to get inquisitive. They are going to ask you questions. And you're going to have to do something, hopefully not illegal, to keep them quiet. Because when people get to a point that they demand answers and you don't have them, you're either going to get real crafty or you're going to try to compromise the gospel just so that you can put some hush-hush on it. A lot of things are being judged. And I know that the latest thing that's being judged is a lot of these men who have been isolated in some cases to say that they committed something wrong against certain women. And they got up to a certain status in life, and all of a sudden they're crumbling down. Now, let me just say that nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty, fell off that wall. It's not just going to be a group of people, a few people that's getting ready to be, brought down. It's getting ready to happen everywhere. Rumor has it that the people of God, the pastors, rumor has it that it's getting ready to happen to the church too. But let me go back to what I'm saying about how much should we know about the history of the word so we can understand what Jesus is saying. What happened to the Jews when Jesus said in the 15th verse of Matthew, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth it, let him understand. And right there, that was Jesus saying right there that you got to know the history of what is written. And Daniel is in the Old Testament. What happened to that Jewish temple was those people came in there and they destroyed that place. And my question to God was, how did it get to that point? And again, how does that relate to me today, 2017? When certain things happened, it happened, but there was a spiritual lesson behind it. And every time I read the word, I'm supposed to walk out being a better temple myself. I'm supposed to be a better person having learned from that. That's why history is so important. Let me tell you why it's important. I'm going to use something very simple. Let's say that you were cooking in the kitchen and you had a paper towel dispenser close to your oven or your stovetop. And you turn your back and one of the paper towels flared close enough to the flame that it ignited the flame, and then it caused a sudden fire. And you walk away from it and nothing drastically happened, but the next time you went in that kitchen and you saw that paper towel dispenser that close to that thing, because of the history of what happened, you're going to modify that. You're going to move that because history has taught you, or the past taught you, that was too close to that. So history is the same way. When we understand what happened in history, then we know how to apply ourselves in today. So that's why it's important that, especially Sunday morning is a time when people get up and we all travel. It's not a lot of traffic on the road, but a lot of people that are on the road are sometimes more than likely at a certain time they're on their way to church somewhere. So it's important that we find a place of worship and a place that we're learning. Of course, we go in there to what we call have a good time. But it ought to be a time where you are serious enough to say, I got some questions about the word, and is anybody here that can help me? And sometimes the pastor may be able to help you. Sometimes he may not. That does not disqualify him that he does not know everything. But it does say that you are hungry to know, so something ought to be put in place so that you can get the information that you need to grow by. So what happened back in when Jesus told him that this stuff was going to happen, and it did come to pass, those people that was coming after those taxes came in and they demanded and they killed. They didn't care nothing about the children. They didn't care anything about the old people. They didn't care nothing about the nursing home. All this good stuff y'all got behind these walls called the Temple of Jerusalem, and you Jews, y'all are not, we see that y'all don't really need us. But at the same time, you either pay us or we're taking this building down. And so the unthinkable to the Jews, it happened. And I was just wondering what happened that they got caught up like that. Let's go back to these Jews and let's look at some things that they had done. The Jews were people that were taught by God.